Well, welcome everyone to another episode of our college essays and application channel on PMTV. We're happy to be here. We're going to get started. Today's episode is designed to be a deep dive into some common topics that you'll run into as you go through the college application process. I'm joined today by my colleague Yala. Yala, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Yala Bess and I am an essay specialist with PrepMatters. So what I do is I help you all come out with an essay that'll really show who you are when it comes time to apply to college.
And I'm Jeff Knox. If you haven't joined us before, I am the Director of Educational Planning at PrepMatters. I work with students one-on-one, and I'd like to say I help them make decisions about their educational plan as they move toward the college admissions process. And if you have any questions for us after this episode today, you can reach out to us directly via email. Our emails are on the screen. You can tweet at us. You can call our office, 301-951-0350. And if you have questions about PMTV or this class or other classes, you can email classes@prepmatters.com. If you have questions during the episode, at this point, I don't know if there are many people who don't know how to use Zoom, but if you don't, there is a little Q&A feature, and you can ask us specific questions if you'd like us to answer them live. However, if you have a question that occurs to you later, or perhaps a question you prefer to have us address directly with you, then please don't hesitate to get connected with us one-on-one. So if you've watched this show before, these episodes on college essays, then you know that it's likely you'll have to write more than one essay. There is a main essay, and we'll address that a little bit today, and then there are probably a number of supplemental essays. These are essays that are designed by the schools themselves, and instead of a general essay that goes to all the schools you're applying to, they're asking you to write additional ones that are just for them. And what we've noticed as we've worked with students for years going through this process is that there are common topics that come up over and over again. Maybe they're worded differently in terms of the prompts, but the questions that they're asking are essentially the same. And so during this episode and the next, I think, couple episodes after this, so next week and the week after, both Thursdays at 5:10, we're going to do a deep dive into likely topics that you'll run into in the supplemental essay category. And for today's episode, we're talking about values and diversity. You are likely to run into a question that asks you about your own values and how they relate to the values of the institution to which you're applying. And you're likely to run into a question about what kind of diversity will you contribute to the student body on that college campus. Before we dig into those specific topics, we want to give you perspective on the college essay and how it fits into the entire application package that you'll present to colleges. And so we always like to show this table, which comes from the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, and it is that is the governing body that develops guidelines and rules and regulations for admissions officers and college counselors who work at schools or who are independent like myself. And we all come together and we talk about the state of college admissions. And once a year in their academic journal on college admissions, they produce evidence to give us a sense of what the state of college admissions is. And in that edition is this table, factors in admission decisions. When an admissions committee has to make decisions about an application, whether they want to admit or reject or waitlist or defer or whatever, here is generally what colleges think about, and this is how they rank them. And you can see that the essay is beat only by grades and test scores, which have for as long as I've been around and longer than that, have always reigned on high in terms of factors in decision making for admissions professionals. So the essay is significant. We show you this table not because this is the secret formula for your application and for you to be admitted to the school of your choice. Every school is different. There are colleges that you apply to that perhaps that do not ask for an essay. There is no option to submit an essay. There are colleges that are obviously test optional now more than ever before. There are colleges that don't ask for letters of recommendation. There are even colleges out there that will allow you to apply transcript optional. They exist. And you can see that 5% of them are represented in this sample size. So the message here is not, okay, this is the order of importance for all the colleges you're applying to. The message is for you to dig in, do your research, go to the college admissions websites and find out what their priorities are so you can stack those up against what you're creating in your application package, and you're giving them what they want. But for most of you, if not all of you, you're here because you know you're applying to a college that wants writing samples. They want to read your essays. And so obviously this is a significant piece for many, many colleges. And of course, grades and the strength of a curriculum are always the most important. And the reason we emphasize that is just so that there's no possible inkling in your head that you can outweigh your academic performance with these other factors. That's not to stress you out, but just to keep your focus where it should be, which is on your academic experience in your coursework. I've already mentioned that there is this main essay that you will be asked to produce, and that will go to all the colleges you apply to. That's assuming you use the Common App. And if you're not already familiar with the Common App, it is an application platform with more than 900 colleges and university members. So it's almost certain that you'll use it. There's another application platform called the Coalition App. Both ask for a main essay, and you have a number of topic options. If you look at number 7, topic of your choice, you've got a wide range. You really can pick anything you want. I just wanted to point that out because we're not talking about your main essay today. I want to make that very clear. We're talking about supplemental essays. Now, some of the topics we talk about very well could be used for a main essay. It's possible that you, with your college list, don't run into supplemental essay topics that ask about values or diversity. And if that's the case, then what we talk about today could be your topic and message for your main essay. I just wanted to make that distinction really clear. But there are supplemental essays. And really quickly, before we move on to those supplemental essays, topic of your choice lets us know that the prompt is not necessarily, you don't choose the prompt because you think that option number 2 is better than option number 4. You start within. And if the story that you want to tell in your essay, the piece of information that you want to give a glimpse of to admissions officers happens to align with any of these prompts, great. But if they don't, no big deal, because 7 is always available to you, topic of your choice. So the prompt is already within you for that main essay. But with supplemental essays, it's different. They're pretty specific. Yella, what's been your experience with supplemental essays, and what are some of the other common topics that you've run into?
Yeah, so because admissions officers are just trying to get an idea of who you are as a person, and they're trying to kind of create this cohort of people and make sure that you're going to be happy and that, you know, that you'll graduate, all these things. So they ask pretty kind of questions that'll help them understand who you are as a person more than your grades. So ways to get at that is asking about an extracurricular activity you may be into and why is that significant? What do you want to study? They, you know, they can see that you maybe applied to be a biology major, but why is that important to you? Why do you want to attend this school? They want to make sure that you're not just sending out applications to random schools, that it's actually a school that you are interested in attending. Again, so that they know that you'll be happy and that you will, you know, graduate in hopefully 4 years. And then there's some other essay prompts that are just kind of random, and they're just trying to see your creativity. For example, you've just reached your millionth hit on a YouTube video. What is your video about? So that's a fun way of really getting to see who you are, and another just that's putting a little more light on what you can bring to their institution.
That's exactly right. And if a school is going to the trouble of adding additional prompts, that's work for you, but it's work for them too, right? You have to write them, they have to read them. So if they're asking for additional information, perhaps, yes, they are trying to suss out the people who would normally just throw an app in if there's no extra prompts versus those who are willing to actually write a little bit more to show that they are serious about that application. But I think it's better to assume that they're really reading these for a reason. And so if they are asking you a question, there's something about that question that's important to them. And the way I like to think about essays is that you assign each, not just essays, each component of your application package a role. You assign it a purpose that's conveying a piece about you in distinct manner, in distinct ways, so that together they create a cohesive message about who you are, an impression that an admissions officer can understand and bring to committee and say, I understand this applicant, here are the components of the application that make sense to me, and here is the argument that I've built, the case that I've built to admit the student. And essays are not an exception to that. The supplemental prompts that we're going to talk about today are about diversity and values. A lot of students will run into these prompts, that ask very specifically about these two topics, and then they ask themselves, wait a minute, what? I've never thought about this before. And if you are joining us tonight and you are an 11th grader, you're in your junior year, you're in a good spot. This is the time that you should start the actual writing process for these essays. If you're younger, if you're a 10th grader, if you're a 9th grader, if you know any 10th graders or 9th graders, then these are questions that they could be thinking about over time. I mean, what's great about this process, this whole college admissions process, is it's not all done fall of senior year. This is a developmental process that begins even before high school, when you start asking yourself these questions, because nowhere else in the world, and I really have not found an exception to this, nowhere else in the world does a college ask you about this kind of stuff. If you were applying to schools in the United Kingdom, in Europe, really anywhere else, they want to know, what do you want to study and why do you want to study it? And that's it. They're not asking these, innermost being kinds of questions. And it's kind of cool that colleges have the ability and the interest to dig into their applicants in a way that helps them build a class that's not just based on grades and scores, not just based on numbers. They easily could do that, but really trying to figure out the kinds of people they want, the kinds of community members they want walking around their campus. And some schools have decided that they can do that best by asking you about how you contribute diversity to a student body and what values are you bringing to this campus. So let's dive into these a little bit more. They're asking you about diversity and values for a reason. And Yala, why do you think a college would ask an applicant, why are you diverse? I mean, are they really just looking at quotas here? They want to know that they have a certain number of Hispanic students, Asian students, gay students? I mean, or is there a deeper meaning here? Is there something about diversity that's significant to their mission?
Yeah, so if you look at college as a growth experience, there's a lot of things that can contribute to that growth. And one of those things is having a student body who have different backgrounds, experiences, ways of thinking, so that the students are challenged, and that will help them in their growth. If everybody thinks the same way and is having the same conversations all the time, then students aren't really developing, right? Then you start off the way that, or you leave the way that you started off. Mm-hmm. So kind of like, what's the point in asking you who you are as a 17-year-old? But they do that to also see, okay, well, where's this person gonna go? Like, we can see the potential in this student to grow while they're at this institution. So it's really about, having a student body where they're going to have enriching discussions and really challenge each other and, inspire them to continue to look for challenges and differences after they graduate.
If they were looking to just fill quotas, and they would just look at the boxes that you check, right? But I think Yala hit the nail on the head. The ways of thinking that are clear when they ask this question are significant to them. Yes, students can contribute diversity by just being different from one another, but it's that reflection on the value of your specific perspective, your specific experience, and how you can use that not only to enhance your own experience, but to enrich the experiences of others. That's what they're looking for. And so if you can convey that you have thought very deliberately and seriously about your personal background and experience and what makes you you, well, that is encouraging and promising to an admissions officer, because then when you have these interactions on campus, whether they're casual or serious or difficult, they know that you have the self-awareness and the courage to have meaningful interactions with one another. And to Gala's point, therefore you grow. And I would say the same thing about values. I don't think colleges are saying, we value this thing, and so therefore you need to value this thing. And if we see that, okay, you're in. I don't think that there is a specific formula for any college. However, I think it is important to be able to identify what your values are, and more important, to show the analysis of those values. Why are they meaningful to you? What about your life experience has taught you the importance of these values? And as a result, what are you bringing to campus so that not only you, but others will benefit because you're there? I like to say people will be better off for having met you. And these are two questions, these are two topics, diversity and values, that allow students to convey this kind of message. So let's see some prompts. Let's see, what are we actually talking about? What will you run into? If you are applying to the University of Michigan, and this prompt has not changed for a very long time, I actually don't know how long, because as long as I've been doing this kind of work, this has been the prompt. Everyone belongs to many different communities and or groups defined by, among other things, shared geography, religion, ethnicity, income, cuisine, interest, race, ideology, or intellectual heritage. Choose one of the communities to which you belong and describe that community and your place within it. Yala, what are your thoughts on this prompt, and why do you think Michigan goes to the trouble of including things like cuisine?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, again, like you said, they just don't think of themselves as diverse. And a lot of times when you're, especially in middle school, high school, you may be trying not to stick out. You may be trying to fit in. And so you're not thinking about the things that make you different or special. So it's kind of like hinting at, like, there's all these little things that make you you. It doesn't have to be something that's in your face. That makes you different. Like, for example, if you grow up in a city and every summer you go by your grandparents who have a farm and you help them on the farm, that's something that makes you different because you've had these different experiences. So it brings a different perspective when you are talking to other city kids. Sometimes I think if they just say diversity, people feel stuck. So Michigan is trying to help you kind of tease out those other things that you can look at to find diversity.
Yeah, especially that phrase, among other things. It's the equivalent to topic of your choice. I don't think they're meaning topic of your choice. You need to write about this prompt, but among other things means it's not just this list, but maybe there's yet another element of diversity that you stumble upon as an applicant that you want to highlight. And so I think Michigan is giving you a wide range, and I think all schools are. I've never run into a prompt that uses the word diversity or is about diversity that says, no, we're talking about race here. I've never run into that. There's a wide range to think about how you can contribute to the mix of students on a college campus. Here's another diversity prompt. This one's from Duke University. Yala, do you mind reading this one for us?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to move the little fairy.
As you can see.
All right. Duke University seeks a talented, engaged student body that embodies the wide range of human experience. We believe that the diversity of our students makes our community stronger. If you'd like to share perspective you bring or experiences you've had to help us understand you better, perhaps related to a community you belong to or your family or cultural background, we encourage you to do so. Real people are reading your application, and we want you to do your best to understand and appreciate the real people applying to Duke. So again, with that, they're letting you know that it's not like they're just looking for check boxes. These are actual people just trying to understand who you are and trying to, again, look at the student body that they're trying to create, or the experience that they're trying to give students. So this prompt kind of helps you to kind of get in the mindset of thinking about this perspective. So I like that word perspective that they use there, because it could just be, like we had spoken about before, a way of thinking that, or a way of seeing the world that may be different from other students.
I also really appreciate the phrase here, real people, because when I talk with students, I tell them that the essays, whether it's the main essay or a supplemental essay, the ones that stick with me long after I've read them are the ones that I as a person relate to, or I've learned something about myself for having read it. And that's a tall order. That's a big expectation to put on a student for an application essay, but I would think about that. I mean, that's why they put this sentence in here. I mean, these are humans, and they want to get it. They want to get you. And that doesn't mean that they relate to you in the sense that they've had the same experience as you, but they have had a realization about you that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to with the rest of your application. We're going to talk more about this diversity idea later in the presentation, but let's look at some prompts that ask specifically not about diversity, but about values. And this next one is from Pitzer College. This is a small school in Claremont, California, about 45 minutes outside of LA. At Pitzer College, 5 core values distinguish our approach to education: social responsibility, intercultural understanding, interdisciplinary learning, student engagement, environmental sustainability. As agents of change, our students utilize these values to create solutions to our world's challenges. Find out more about our core values. That's what you actually can click that and read even more about each of these values. Please choose from the following prompts and answer below. And afterward, they give you a list of, I think, 4 or 5 different prompts. You just choose one and you answer. Now, they could have just started with, please choose from the following prompts and answer below. They could have just said that. But they gave you all of this. And the bolding I included. They did not bold these. It's almost like a playbook for what they're asking for. I mean, they want you to not touch on each of these probably. I think that would be too much to squeeze into one essay. But I mean, pick your favorite, right? Which of these speaks to you, read more about it, and then speak their language, right? So it's, again, this is not saying if you do not believe in these values, you're not the right fit. I mean, I think that'd be a hard argument to make, that there are humans that really can't find any value in any of the items listed here. But pick one, and then, and we're gonna do this in a little bit, tie that value to concrete evidence in your life that's gonna help them see that you understand who they are. And they're spelling it out for you right here. That takes reflection. Go ahead, Yala.
And also with some of these questions that aren't like really general, like this one, they're telling you this is who we are as an institution. And it's very important. So also while you're thinking about, what schools you want to apply to, if, they are really, their values are listed throughout the whole thing and it just doesn't feel like a fit for you, then that's also something to consider. But even as you're answering other questions, you'll want to keep these things in mind, which in general, when you're applying to schools, looking at their mission statements or value statements is something you should do as you're looking into the institution.
That's a really, really good point. One more about values. I believe this is University of Vermont. Y'all, you can take this one.
Yep. At the University of Vermont, we have a set core values called our common ground, which define how we work, live, study, do research, and participate as members of the community. Each core value statement falls under one of the following words: respect, integrity, innovation, openness, justice, and responsibility. Choose one word from our common ground and explain why it is important to you. how it has impacted you and how you have incorporated it into your life. So again, they are listing out who they are as an institution, and they want to see how you embody just one of their values. And again, you want to think about which one's important to you and which one you have concrete examples for.
Well, and I think that's the key, the concrete examples. Any one of you could write an essay on why it's important to be respectful, why it's important to live with integrity, blah, 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 blah. They want to see the evidence. You can make the claim that you live your life with these values, but where is the concrete evidence? And that's what I want to get into in just a few moments. There's one more school that that we threw in here, just because Boston College gives you two options, both one on diversity, one on values. There are actually two other prompts. You only have to pick one of the four, but the two of the four that I teased out are because one's about values, one's about diversity. When you choose a college, you will join a new community of people who have different backgrounds, experiences, and stories. What is it about your background, your experience, or your story that will, to y'all's word, enrich Boston College's community? Right? And then I think that's so well worded as a prompt, because they're not letting you off the hook. Why is your experience, the differences that make you you, why is that going to enrich the lives of other people around you? And as a Jesuit institution, they have a prompt about values. Jesuit education considers the liberal arts a pathway to intellectual growth and character formation. What beliefs and values inform your decisions and actions today? And how will Boston College assist you in becoming a person who thinks and acts for the common good? This does not mean, tell me why you're Jesuit. It's a Jesuit institution, but there are plenty of students who are not Catholic who attend Boston College and are quite happy. This is about finding the common ground between Jesuit values and your values, and seeing that they overlap. And I don't think there are a lot of exceptions to humans walking the face of the planet and thinking that doing acts for the common good is an evil thing. I think it's not asking you to become Catholic. And so it's just merely looking for that common ground, so that there are no surprises there when you get there and people are thinking about others as you go through your 4 years of college. So let's go back to diversity. We just went through some prompts. The first couple were for diversity. The second couple were for values. And then we gave you kind of a grab bag with Boston College. And this slide is meant to show you that diversity can be defined in so many different ways. And I think Michigan's language really spoke to that, and giving you, just a smaller list, but still a wide range of ways to think about your own diverse background. And I think when many students see prompts about diversity, or interview questions for that matter about diversity, they immediately think, and through no fault of their own, about race. And race is absolutely an okay topic to bring up. But if you belong to a demographic that isn't underrepresented or isn't a quote unquote minority, then you might freeze and think, oh my gosh, I don't have diversity. And that simply isn't the case, because by definition of being human, you do bring a diverse set of experience and qualities and values to any group, whether it's a college campus or, I don't know, a group project in your science class. And so I just want to cherry pick, and y'all, if you don't mind, we can kind of just go back and forth, not on every single one of these, but just kind of bringing up particular kinds or types of diversity that are interesting here. And so one that I think is often overlooked, but in college admissions, but not overlooked in the news or in just the ether around, is political diversity. And I don't think that it is a good idea to go on a political rant in any college essay. However, politics has found its way into a lot of the crevices of the different elements of society. And if you're able to talk about how you have navigated a particularly difficult political landscape, whether it's in your family or the region you live in, it's not about what you believe in politically or trying to get other people to believe in your political ideology. It's about how do you interact with someone who doesn't agree with you, who doesn't believe in the things you believe in. And for a number of reasons, politics is not always just a gentleman's agreement or disagreement. It can get really heated. And so how do you interact? Whether it's politics or some other topic, how do you engage with someone when the topic is so powerful that it can bring about emotions that are really tough to deal with? And perhaps you've had experience with political diversity and you know how to navigate, therefore you know how to navigate other kinds of tough conversations, tough interactions. That's just one. Yala, your turn.
Yeah. And with that, Jeff knows I had a student who was, raised going to protest and had to, find out on her own what was important to her, and had to, we really had to wrestle with that because she was a student who was like, I'm not special, nothing special about me, but we ended up talking about, politics to really show how she could bring diversity to the campus. Another one that we can look at is family situation. Well, we one thing we do say to kind of try to stay away from is like, divorces may not be the best, thing to bring up, but there are different ways that you can grow up, whether you grow up in a house with a large family, and you had to take care of your siblings, or if you just have different parts of your family all living together, or if you want to talk about having to live between two homes, if it's really different ways of growing up, you have to think about who you are in one home versus another home. Those are definitely things that you can touch on, because that is a part of your experience and can really change how you think.
Exactly. I mean, I was a latchkey kid, if anyone in the audience even knows what that means, but that was a popular term when I was growing up. And it just meant that I was home alone after school for a number of hours, and I had to learn to take care of myself and be independent during that small bit of time. But then I have a friend growing up who was responsible for essentially rearing her younger sister. Mm-hmm. And so we had very different experiences. Therefore, there was a diversity of experiences there. And just to clarify a point that Yala made about writing about divorce, there's nothing obviously wrong about living in a household where there's divorce. We've just noticed over the years that the topic of divorce is an overused one. And if you were at one of our episodes a few weeks ago, you probably heard about that topic. And I don't know if this is true anymore, but I think the statistic is that the majority of marriages end in divorce. And so it just happens to be so common. It's really hard to make that topic stand out in a way. There are always exceptions, right? But Yala's point is a well-taken one. Next, I don't know, what do I want to bring up? I think I'll pick intellectual diversity. This doesn't mean smart people, dumb people. That's not what that means. Intellectual diversity means a diverse array of interests in intellectual pursuits. This is where you can nerd out, right? I was working with a student, he's just really into fish. And it sounds odd, but when you talk to him, I was like, wow, I actually care more about fish than I ever thought I would. These are fascinating creatures. So to show that your passions in a way, especially your intellectual pursuits, even if they're just fun, they're not going to be, I don't think this kid is going to be do a career that's related to fish. Maybe, who knows? But just that kind of excitement and knowledge about a topic, it lightened in me an excitement also about not fish so much, but I had asked myself the question, what do I get so excited about that brings about the level of energy that fish do for this young man? And that intellectual diversity is contagious. And so I think a lot of colleges would be very interested in whatever you would nerd out on. Mm-hmm.
And another one would be work experience, because, some people do have to work, some people choose to work, and, others may not. But either way, not everybody has the same summer job, or not everybody, you know, only works during the summer. Some people do it during the school year. But with that, people are gathering or interacting with different people, are gathering different skill sets. I had a student who, you know, has a pretty, you know, wealthy upbringing, but he still worked over the summer at as a caddy at the golf course at the club that his family was a part of, and he had to grapple with what it was like sometimes being on the member end versus the employee end. And so that was a really, you know, interesting thing to work out with him and read about. But then you do also have people who, you know, like I mentioned earlier, if you have to work on your family's farm, or you volunteer with, you know, you know, volunteer for a shelter or something like that. Those all have very different experiences that you bring, which, you know, if you look around in your classrooms, you might be like, you can't think of anything, but that, you know, just that experience alone and the different people you interact with can really, you know, show who you are or who you're becoming.
And the last point we'll make before we move on to the next slide about values is that these don't have to be discrete in the way you address them. You don't have to pick just one. There's a lot of overlap here. I could see why sexual orientation or gender expression or gender identity would overlap with geography. Perhaps a student living in an area where sexual orientation and gender identity, fluidity, expression is really meant to be seen in one way and one way only, and perhaps that's not that student's experience. Political diversity could overlap with intellectual or ideological diversity. Perhaps, you know, your family is of a political ilk that doesn't match your personal ideology about whatever topic. So the point I'm trying to make is that 2, 3, 4 of these could all crop up in a single essay. Mm-hmm. You don't have to just pick one. And we'll have a similar slide on values. When a college asks about values, they're asking obviously for a very particular reason, but there's one college in particular I want to bring up because I think they're an interesting case study. Trinity College, which is a small liberal arts college in Connecticut, is one of the few colleges that's very open about how they assess values in an applicant. Many colleges would consider soft skills or soft traits, as they might call it, and they're kind of tight-lipped about it because, as one college has put it before, once you show the metrics or try to show how you measure something, it can be gamed, right? And so no college wants to say, here is the formula to get into our school, only because they don't want any student to live inauthentically so that they get admitted, right? That they're putting on an audition for a school, but perhaps that audition is not in line with their true self. So a lot of colleges, it's not a science, it's an art. They kind of just get an impression. But Trinity College is really interesting because they're open about it, and they identified, I think, like 7 or 8 specific, it's actually the first 7 or 8 on this list, starting with creativity, values that they care about, and they measure them. They have a scale, and they assign a number to where they see concrete evidence of these values elsewhere in the application. Maybe there is a letter of recommendation that concretely shows that this is a value the student demonstrates. Maybe it's the student's essay. Maybe it's the interview. And I like that way of thinking, both for diversity and for values. Whatever you're writing about or thinking about, the next step, once you say, oh yeah, I have this element of diversity, or oh yeah, I have this value, is where in my life is the concrete example that proves to an admissions reader that I'm bringing this kind of value set with me. And so beyond just the list that Trinity College has provided, we offer you these other kinds of values that have meaning for a college. I don't think it's the right move is to try to figure out the value system of a college and then what's the word I'm looking for? Scheme your way into showing that you have the exact same values. I think a better method, and one that can be started much earlier than senior year, is asking yourself very concretely, what are my values? How do I know these are my values? And what experiences have I had in my life that prove to myself, most importantly, but perhaps to other people, that this is true. I'm not just talking. This isn't just lip service. I live these, and I've had experiences that have shaped what my values are, and I have some self-awareness about this. So let's do a little bit of back and forth again, Yala. Just a few of these, and I'll start with self-awareness. I think self-awareness is one of the biggest ones. I talk about self-awareness all the time. Colleges want to know that you're not just going through the motions of life. You're not just following the orders of people who are telling you what to do because that's what you do in order to get what you want. Take this class because that's the class colleges want to see. Write this essay on this topic because that's what colleges want to see. You're living authentically, and the way you do that is through introspection and self-awareness, and that takes some reflection, a deliberate time set aside to think about this stuff. And it's easy to live life day by day, going through the motions, almost like in a fast forward mindset. And then you come to the application process and you get these questions and you don't know what to do because you haven't sat with yourself. And so that's why I particularly like self-awareness.
Yeah, and a good one is also curiosity, just showing that, you noticed something or you had a question and you actually wanted to look into it further. You wanted to seek out an understanding or an answer and actually took that initiative to do so, whether it's through getting experience doing something or researching something, or just through that thought, just looked into it further and grew, it grew your mind from it. So they want to know that there will be students on campus who, aren't necessarily like, I'm only here to learn math, or I'm only here to learn this one thing, that you're going to take advantage of the time on campus to kind of explore different things and learn more about the world.
Another one of my favorites is existential intelligence, which sounds really big, but the idea is that you have the capacity to think about really big ideas. I mean, we're talking about the difference between good and evil, the meaning of life, like this kind of stuff, like really philosophical kind of thinking. And some colleges would be interested in that. I don't want the message that you hear to be, oh dear God, if I don't have serious hours thinking about the difference between good and evil, colleges won't like me. Not every college is looking for existential intelligence, but when it shows up, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And then also empathy is a good one. But they want to see that you can put yourself in other people's shoes, that just because you haven't experienced something doesn't mean that you aren't understanding of another person's situation or feelings. And a part of that comes with that whole idea of diversity as well, because you have all these people who are different from you, and they want to know that you will, a part of understanding, growing is understanding where other people are coming from, and really just taking the time to sit on that and and then that also shows that maybe, you would go out to help others, and all these bunch of things comes with empathy.
So this is a pretty, long list. It's not exhaustive, but it's close to it. And it's a good place to start. It's not hard to Google lists of values, and for each one, ask yourself, if I had to pick 2 or 3, what are the ones that I hold most dear? And the kind of thinking and perhaps even writing that you can do now before you even run into these prompts will get you ready to answer them in a compelling way, because you've done the hard work ahead of time. And I think that's a big message here, is that before you even see the prompts, you can start thinking about these questions, because then that will give you the time to draw a connection between, yes, this is where I think I bring diversity, or yes, this is a value of mine, but here is the evidence for that claim I'm going to make. Here is that moment, that experience, that memory, that interaction, that activity that is a concrete example to demonstrate whatever it is that you're trying to convey to colleges. And that's the part that I think can be missing sometimes from essays, is that a student can talk all day about the importance of cultural diversity and why they value diversity and they want to go to a college that has diversity, but they're missing the point of the prompt. Same with values. They can talk all day about why it's important to be intellectually curious, but they haven't really shown the evidence of the rigor of their own intellectual curiosity. And so that part is really key. And just to wrap up with some big ideas, because you have the main essay and you have a number of supplemental essays, which may or may not ask about diversity or your values, map this stuff out. Even before the supplemental essays are available in August, if you're an 11th grader, usually it's the August before your senior year. That's when you can see the actual wording of your supplemental essays. It's not a bad idea to assume that you will be asked about diversity or values in some sense. It'll help you with topics for essays. It'll help you with the interviews. It also, I don't know, has some personal benefit too. So having this kind of work done ahead of time is a smart move. Obviously, show the evidence we already talked about. Prove what you're talking about. It's not just the suggestion that you make that diversity and having values is important, but what about your life makes that point really clear. And then always, always, always keep it real. Authenticity is key. And so starting ahead of time will help you do that. I mean, especially if you're a 9th or 10th grader, or you know a 9th or 10th grader, having them think about these things over time helps them maintain that authenticity. I hope you found this episode of the College Application Essay Channel useful today. If you have follow-up questions, please reach out to Yala or to me directly. The emails are on your screen. You've got our phone number, you've got our Twitter handles, and we're happy to help.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Best of luck with everyone, and off you go. Start those essays.